All right. Hello and welcome to Josh Peck Live. Hope you are all doing well today. We definitely have a lot to talk about. There have really been a lot of developments and things that we've been talking about recently. Specifically today, I want to talk about some of these cases, and there's a lot of them, way more than we would be able to get through in one night. But these cases of child molesters, pedophiles being released from prison. It seems to be happening all over the country. No one knows what's going on or why this is the case, but we're going to look at some of these cases and see if we can find some commonalities and see what's going on. Now, first, before we get to that, we got to talk about some breaking news, and we can get to some of that now. Obviously, most of you are familiar with the Ghislaine Maxwell case. Well, this just broke today that Ghislaine Maxwell's lieutenant, Sarah Kellen, may be arrested next. And then it says her parents fear. But it says the parents of Ghislaine Maxwell's accused Lieutenant Sarah Kellen worry their daughter could be arrested next in Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking ring, according to a report. This comes from the New York Post. Here's a quote from a report by the Daily Mail. Quote, after Maxwell, I think Sarah's next. And this comes, end quote, this comes from Kellen's mom, Mary Kellen, said as she choked up at the prospect of her daughter's possible arrest. But the 74-year-old mom said that her daughter was just another victim swept up in Epstein's cycle of sexual abuse, having begun working for him as a teenager. And the mother told the outlet, quote, what happened to all those girls is horrendous, but I do feel that Sarah was also a victim. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I can see she was maneuvered or brainwashed, end quote. And, you know, I'll add to this, you don't need to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist. A lot of this stuff is pretty cut and dry. Now, specifically with Sarah Kellen's case, we need to look more into that and get some more information before we can make a determination if this was simply a child grooming exercise and if she really was a victim or if she was a perpetrator. It really depends on when she was brought into it, if she feared for her life. And if she gets arrested and has to stay on trial, then a lot more of that will come out. So there are that's the latest news with the Ghislaine Maxwell. Of course, we're going to continue on that. We'll stay on the story. And if any of you have information as well, feel free to post it. You can find Daily Renegade on Facebook, and best place to go is just dailyrenegade.com. If you're a member, you will be able to comment on posts. We sort of have our own little social media website, like built right into the Daily Renegade website. So dailyrenegade.com. You will be able to get full episodes of everything we do. It's only $10 a month or $100 a year. I suggest getting the $100 a year because then you only have to pay for it once. You get 2 months for free. You don't have to worry about it for a while. But you get all of our episodes. We have about a dozen unique shows, so you will find something you like. Some are talking head style, such as this. Some are documentary style, and everything in between. So that website again is dailyrenegade.com. Okay, something else I wanted to talk about. This has also been pretty big news, and I haven't had a chance to talk about it live yet. I've posted about it on Facebook, and I want to get to some of that. But Chrissy Teigen, I don't know if it's Teigen or Teigen. I think it's Teigen. But she has been deleting tweets left and right. And if you're not familiar with the story, we can go through it. This comes from the Daily Mail. But it says, the headline is, I'm worried for my family. Chrissy Teigen hits breaking point on Twitter over wild conspiracy theorists, linking her to Jeffrey Epstein as she deletes 60,000 tweets. And of course, you're always going to see headlines like this. They're wild conspiracy theorists. Who could ever possibly think that this could be happening? And the truth is, there is reason to believe this, but the problem is a lot of times these things get handled wrong. They get handled really rash, not very well thought out. So we're going to get into some of that. But here's the story if you're not familiar with it. And again, it's told by the Daily Mail, and with a headline like this, you know, wild conspiracy theorists, of course there's going to be a bias. There's going to be a bias that is going to try to paint this whole story as completely ridiculous. But it's not. And if you see the content of her tweets, the way that she talked about children, especially in like toddlers and tiaras and that kind of stuff, you know, saying that saying things like what watching Cartwheel makes her feel like she needs to go to jail. I mean, what else could that possibly mean? But again, she's deleted all these tweets, so it's very difficult to verify what was said and what was rumored that she said. So here's the story. Chrissy Teigen has admitted that she's worried for her family after receiving vile attacks on Twitter from conspiracy theorists who have been bizarrely linking the model to convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein since last October. See how they'll use these words like bizarrely, you know, conspiracy theorists, like this whole thing is just ridiculous and there's nothing to it. It's very easy for these people to just put this in the category of crazy conspiracy theory, and then what happens, unfortunately, is they put the whole the whole pedophile, everything having to do with pedophilia, in that the model and TV personality forcibly shot down rumors that she and husband John were on Epstein flight logs. Convicted pedophile Epstein allegedly had island logs of everyone that flew on his so-called Lolita Express to his private island, Little St. James, which has been nicknamed Pedophile Island. And so she also tweeted out, when Pedo Ghislaine sings like a canary if she doesn't die, and we have nothing to do with this, I know for a fact it won't go away. They'll just think of another excuse. It is extremely disheartening. I don't know how to stop this. I don't think anyone quite gets it. She says they're losers. So continuing on, it says, Twitter users claimed last week that Chrissy was on the flight log for a plane heading to the sex offender's private island, prompting Chrissy to respond, quote, if we want to play with your life just for fun, do you understand that if I were on a flight for the date of his manifest, I'd be a victim, end quote. And so that's something that's not said in this article. It's not said if there is evidence that she was on a flight log, and if she was on a flight log, for what dates, how old would she have been, and so on and so forth. Now, just because like she says here, that don't you understand, if I were on a flight log, it would make me a victim. That to me sounds like it could be her just saying, you know, I'm not on a flight log, but it could be her kind of getting ahead of this in case she is on a flight log. Then she can start to say that she was a victim of it. But again, we would have to look at the dates and what's really going on. If somebody is on a flight log, the only thing we know is that they were on that flight. If they are adults, then it's probably safe to assume that they're not victims. And then if they're children, it's safe to assume that they're not perpetrators. But what I think what people are looking at is who she is today. She's an adult. And while she was making those tweets about children and about going to jail and about like eating children and stuff, she was an adult. So allegedly, those came around 2013 or so. So if she's 34 now, then she still would have been well into adulthood. So it says, in another tweet, Chrissy slammed the conspiracy theorists who refuse to accept that there's no truth to their allegations. And then it has several pictures of her and her family. And she talks about TikTok and how TikTok is in on it too, and then just a bunch of F words, basically. So that's where we're at with this story. I posted something about this because I think there was something that was overlooked in this whole case, and really how it was handled, the way that we decided to handle this. I guess when people go and find tweets, and then. Because a lot of the screen caps that I've seen, it's her tweet in response to something that we can't see. And so the response, we don't even get the context for. Now, could she have been just telling terrible jokes? You know, maybe. I mean, a lot of these people seem to have an awful and disgusting sense of humor. A disgusting sense of humor isn't criminal, but it certainly is. It's still evil. It's still wrong and bad. But because all of these tweets have been deleted, we don't have the context of a lot of them. All we have are screenshots, and then even the screenshots, we don't know which ones have been doctored and which ones haven't, because it's safe to assume that there's probably going to be some people that will create fake screenshots of tweets and say that they're hers when they're really not. That kind of thing happens quite a bit. So, like for example, there's one that goes around Facebook all the time of Joel Osteen, and the picture, the supposed screen cap shows somebody asking Joel Osteen Ministries for prayer, and then Joel Osteen Ministries responds and says, basically, if you want prayer from us, you got to give us money. Turns out that whole thing was doctored. It was photoshopped. There's no truth in it. That never happened. It's a lie. But that's still, and that one's been circulating for years now, and that's still getting shared around, and people thinking that it's true. So that definitely can happen a lot. And unfortunately, it does happen a lot. So we have to be careful with that. We have to be real about it. You know, just because someone looks guilty and, you know, just because to us it may seem like they are, it doesn't mean they actually are. We have to collect evidence. And we had a chance to do that. We had a chance to collect evidence from her Twitter account. But I think what happened is we let her on too soon what we were up to before we could really gather enough evidence to present to the world. So I wrote this on Facebook. I said, with these Chrissy Teigen tweets, everyone did it again. And I say did it again because this happened with Wayfair, and we talked about that on the previous video where we talked about the normalization of pedophilia. But with these Chrissy Teigen tweets, everyone did it again. People thought they found something, so they posted it everywhere, alerting her they were suspicious, and now she's deleted all of her tweets, ruining any evidence that may have existed. All there is now are screenshots of tweets, but as we know, those can be manipulated, and there's no way to authenticate them now. Same thing happened with Wayfair. If there actually was something going on, we'll never know for sure because they were immediately alerted by us to our suspicions. It's like what I said on yesterday's Peck report. Imagine the FBI is going to raid some company because of a suspended drug running operation, so they announce immediately their suspicions. They go everywhere with it. They're basically publicly showing off that they think something is going on, and in the process alert the company, giving the company time to cover their tracks and delete any evidence. Now we would say that's pretty stupid, right? Well, that's what we keep doing, especially with these suspected pedophiles or child sex traffickers. This is why we're not taken seriously. This is why it's so easy for the world to throw us in the crazy conspiracy bin. This is why we make no headway in actually helping children when through this kind of stuff. We actually make headway when we do things properly. You know, when we go through proper channels, when we collect evidence for real, then we make headway. But when we just jump on the next fad, you know, it doesn't go anywhere, and then we're just on to the next one. So we're actually ruining a lot of evidence that we could have. So I continued by writing, we need to decide if we're in this to chase clout online or to actually collect evidence to help abuse children. You know, unfortunately, there are a lot of people that are using this topic to just get more followers. There are people doing that. And I'm not saying that everybody who tries to expose this stuff is doing that. There are some higher profile people that actually have the audience that when they find something and they can corroborate it and verify it, that when they expose it, actually something does get done. So there are people that are in this for the right reason with large audiences. But there are also people who see those large audiences and they get tempted and they think, hey, maybe for me too. Maybe if I find my own little conspiracy here, even if there's not a lot of evidence for it, you know, maybe I can get some followers online too. There absolutely are people in it for that. Again, not everybody, but it does happen. So we need to be aware of that. So then I wrote, we need a private forum so when a suspicion comes up, we can talk about it and gather evidence privately so we don't alert the suspected criminals time and time again. If there's a widespread desire for it, I will build a forum on Daily Renegade where we can do this, and we'll put it in the members section to ensure it stays private and minimize the risk of being infiltrated. If you're interested in this, let me know in the comments below. Also, I have a link to yesterday's Peck report. So, you know, I'll just say if you're listening to this live right now, you can let me know in the chat or in the comments if that's something you would like to see. But I think we've already started to build it because I think it's definitely needed. So dailyrenegade.com, hopefully that'll be available shortly. I also wrote another one from the story that we just looked at. I commented on this, the story that we just looked at from Daily Mail. And so this kind of just goes along with what I just said. I said, you know, tipped your hand too fast, alerted her to your suspicions, gave her time to delete any evidence that may have existed. No one's going to believe screenshots because they can be manipulated. And now everyone, myself included, is likely to think there wasn't really anything going on and it was all blown out of proportion, probably just a few disgusting jokes, and that's it. But hey, if you get a few hundred more followers on Twitter, that's worth it, right? No need for due diligence and quiet evidence collecting. There's no clout to be found in that. Nah, instead, blast celebrities on Twitter so you can show off to your friends when they get triggered and tweet at you back. Because this isn't really about the kids, is it? It's about an opportunity to become mildly famous on social media. What a sad way to live a life. By the way, this message isn't directed at most people who follow me. You guys are awesome and are typically on board with me in putting the victims first. This is for the jackals that ruin it for the rest of us and totally discredit our work. We need to get real comfortable totally disassociating with people like that, and they're easy to spot. I'm going to have a forum created on Daily Renegade website where we can quietly collect evidence together, and if and when the time comes to alert the authorities, we will do that in an orderly manner so as to not also alert the suspects. We can work together and bring abusers to justice, but we have to completely disassociate from clout seekers who are just using this as their meal ticket to internet fame. Renegade Social is coming. Who's ready? So I talk about that, and that is something that we're building right now. But the main point is that we really need to be careful because the second we put something online, if we have a suspicion, the suspect is aware that we're looking. You know, we need to be a lot more undercover than we've been, and we need to not use this as a reason to just go get followers online or get a bunch of hits or get a bunch of likes. You know, we got to be careful for it, and that's why I said, you know, we have to decide who is this for. Are we using this as something to get followers? Or are we using this to help the real children who are being abused? So the Chrissy Teigen thing, I don't know. Again, it's one of those situations where just unfortunately there's not enough information, and there probably won't be. We might have, if we did this a little quieter, we might have been able to gather a lot of evidence before things went down. But you know, unfortunately, that didn't happen. You know what happened with the Jeffrey Epstein case? What was really good about that? People did try to expose him way too early on, but for some reason, maybe it was just because Jeffrey Epstein was a very egotistical, cocky person, he didn't get scared, and most people just kind of didn't believe it. And because he was so rich, he was able to pay people off, so news stories didn't run about it and stuff like that. But it wasn't because we were being careful. It was because he was so cocky. But we had a lot of time to gather a lot of evidence. So when he finally fell, when he was finally exposed for who he was, we already had all this evidence and all of these reasons. That's why the Epstein didn't kill himself meme got so popular, because everybody already knew who he was. Everybody knew what he was into. There was a ton of evidence to support it. We didn't have to go based on tweets that could be interpreted in different ways. We didn't have to go on any of that. We already had some solid, verified evidence. Now, you take something like Pizzagate. There was a lot of things with Pizzagate that I believe was absolutely real. There were a lot of things that very well could have been looked at. But the problem is, what happened with Pizzagate was similar to what happened with Satanic Panic. There was also a lot of sensationalism, a ton of it. There was a lot of things that were claimed that just were not true. Flat out, just weren't true. No evidence to support it. So that made it easy for authorities, for the mainstream media, for the general public. That made it easy for a lot of people to just throw everything Pizzagate related into the crazy conspiracy bin. We basically just made that easy for them. Now, if we would have done like we did with Epstein and said, okay, we're not going to use this to sensationalize and just try to gain followers. We're actually going to do diligent research, and anything that we can't verify, we're not going to put out there as truth. If we would have just done that, and there is a lot of stuff, even today, still, there's a lot of stuff with the Pizzagate case that has a lot of strong evidence supporting it. We talk about it on this channel quite a bit. So, unfortunately, because many times we in the conspiracy world, we don't police our own. We let anybody just basically say anything, and we don't challenge it much. And then when we do challenge it, usually the person who's making the claim that has no evidence to support it, usually they get angry, and then we're just focused on the argument. We're focused on the fight instead of the actual issue at hand. So that keeps happening a lot. I mean, there are so many things, just pictures of things. Somebody will put a picture of, somebody with somebody else, and then they will create this whole story around it. The only thing a picture like that shows is that those two people had a picture together. So I give this example. I go and I tour the country. I talk all around the country. I do conferences and speaking engagements, and I film for TV shows. I've been on History Channel and Science Channel and all these things. So I get around quite a bit. I have had my picture taken with thousands of people by now, easily. Any one of them could turn out to be a serial killer. Now, how easy would it be for somebody to dig up that picture on that guy's Facebook page and say, "Oh, see, he had a picture with Josh Peck. See, they're like best friends. Josh Peck must have something to do with this." Especially with celebrities, pictures don't really say anything. They take pictures with a lot of people. Most people they don't know. Some they do. They go to parties with people that they don't. When you go to I don't party anymore, but I used to. When I would go to a party like in high school or in my young adult years, I would know maybe 5 or 6 people there, but I wouldn't know all of them. Who does that? So that kind of thing happens quite a bit. So all it means is that there was a picture taken. Now, let's say somebody says, well, here, there's more than one. There's a bunch of pictures. All right. All it says is there's a bunch of pictures. Okay. You trying to use that as actual evidence is going to discredit the cause that you're saying you're fighting for, because people are going to look at that and they're going to say you are putting your own interpretation on this. There's no context. The only context is like this pedophilia thing, but that's the one that you're putting on it. That's not there in the photo. Now, if you had a photo of, the person like with a child in a sexual way, well, then you got something, then you can claim that as evidence. The context is right in the picture. So there are a lot of things like that. Screen caps of tweets are like that. There's so many things. So now with the Chrissy Teigen thing, all we have is unsubstantiated stuff now. We can't go to her Twitter and verify any of these are real anymore, the way that we were able to before. And it's going to make our job a lot harder if we want to expose these people. And not even just expose, but if we want to be sure that we're accusing the right people. I think this is something that we don't think about a lot. What if we make a mistake and we accuse somebody that is not a pedophile? Let's say they make crude, horrible jokes online, but they're actually not a pedophile. What are we going to say when we're face to face with God? And we weren't careful and we ended up lying about somebody. Even if they're an evil person in every other capacity, even if they're one of these Hollywood celebs that are just materialistic, they only think about themselves, they hate Jesus, all right, all these bad things, but they're not a pedophile. And then we go and say that they are and get people to believe that, but they're not. See, I don't ever want to make that mistake. I want to be extremely careful with that charge, because that's one of the worst things that you can call somebody. On top of that, the more people that we call pedophile, that word pedophile is going to lose its meaning. It's going to lose its intensity. It's like how everything today is racist. The word racist just doesn't even really mean anything anymore. It used to be 10, 20 years ago, if somebody was called a racist, that was like shocking. That was horrible. You don't ever want to be called that. But today everything is called racist, so that word has lost its potency. It doesn't really mean what it used to mean anymore, because everything is called that. We could make the mistake of doing the same thing with the word pedophile or child molesters. We could end up doing the same thing. And if we call everything pedophiles, if we call everybody a pedophile because they told a disgusting joke 5 years ago that we don't like, then it's going to lose its potency and we're not going to be able to be effective. So we have to be extremely careful. That's what I'm getting at. We have to be sure, and we have to be able to prove it to people. And if if we're trying to prove it to somebody and they don't believe it, we need to understand why they don't believe it. Don't get mad. You know, it's a waste of time to get mad. But we need to understand, okay, why don't they believe this? If they have a reason, a legitimate reason, then we need to understand that our evidence is lacking. Okay, that's a good thing, because then we can improve. It's a good thing to know that. We don't want to just, you know, go in with nothing and expect everybody to believe it. But unfortunately, that does happen quite a bit. People do believe anything. Okay, now, I want to get to the main topic at hand with that as kind of the foundation. There are pedophiles all over the country being released, and this very well could be happening in your area. They're being released from prison. This is unprecedented how often this is happening now. It is like one day, you know, the establishment or whoever is in charge of this stuff just decided, hey, let's just release all the pedophiles. So I want to look at some of these stories to show you what I'm talking about. And this is what I'm talking about with evidence. So these are actual, real events. These are real things that are happening. We can look at official reports. These are real people that are being released, and I can show you time and time again how all of these are being released. Now, is this all coincidental? Is this part of some organized scheme? I don't know. But it is very strange. One of the first story we're going to look at is one of the most shocking. OC officials warn residents of dangerous sex offender. Now, notice there, sex offender. You know, why not pedophile, child molester, child abuser? You know, sex offender is a little softened, isn't it? But warn of dangerous, and they put dangerous in quotes. You know, when they do that, it's like it's not real or something. But when you look at the story, it's horrifying. But of course, this is Southern California for you. This is the Los Angeles Times. You can't expect them to report unbiasedly. Of course, everything is going to be left-leaning. But sex offender released from mental hospital. Why was he in a mental hospital to begin with? That's my question. So the guy's name is Kerry J. Smith. He's 59. He was sent to Patton State Hospital in San Bernardino in 1999. There's a picture of him. So if you live in the area, you can keep your eye out. This is a very dangerous person. A Costa Mesa man who officials say is a dangerous predator has been released after spending more than 20 years in a mental hospital, prompting Orange County officials to warn residents and urge Governor Gavin Newsom to intervene. And of course he hasn't, because this isn't important to him. This kind of thing Gavin Newsom isn't going to be troubled by. He's got other leftist things where this to focus on that this doesn't fit. But Kerry J. Smith, 59, was sent to Patton State Hospital in San Bernardino in 1999 on a 72-hour psychiatric hold after his wife gave a psychiatrist a letter that detailed Smith describing sexual acts he wanted to perform on a 7-year-old boy who lived in his neighborhood. The Orange County District Attorney's Office said in a news release on Tuesday. Why was this guy not thrown in jail? Why take him to his psychiatrist? You know, throw him in jail first, and then if you want to check his mental state at that point. But why even put him get him to a psychiatrist in the first place? Since 1999, Smith has been held by the state under a section of the state's Welfare and Institution Code as a result of a series of civil trials that determined he presented a demonstrated danger of inflicting substantial physical harm to children. The news release stated, and he was allowed a new trial every 6 months to determine whether he was still a threat. DA office spokesperson Kimberly Ed said in a news release, quote, during those hearings, Smith has repeatedly testified that he fantasizes about raping and then killing young boys in order to avoid being identified. He claims that he has killed 3 boys and molested 200. He prefers to go by the name Mr. RTK, which stands for rape, torture, and kill. I don't know what... There's a lot of things I could say about this, but the fact that the governor, this just isn't on his radar at all. You know, somebody is, this guy's going to hurt. This guy is going to hurt a child, multiple children, and the governor isn't doing anything about it. Over the years, psychologists testified that Smith posed an imminent danger to the public, and the county council argued to keep him confined. However, the state hospital did not renew the hold against Smith, allowing it to expire on July 11th, the news release stated. The Orange County District Attorney's Office, which is not a party of the civil hold on Smith, filed 20 felony counts of lewd and lascivious acts with a minor held against him in 2002, but prosecutors were forced to dismiss the charges due to the statute of limitations at the time, the news release stated. This guy should be locked up and never see the light of day again. In 1985, Smith pled guilty to a misdemeanor sexual offense involving a child and was required to register as a sex offender. This goes all the way back down to this goes all the way back to 1985. I was 1 year old in 85. I was born in 84. So this goes that far back when I was a 1 year old, and it's going on that long, and he's still just released like nothing. That registration was removed in 2005, but Orange County Board of Supervisors Chairwoman Michelle Steele and District Attorney Todd Spitzer are urging Newsom to reinstate the registration requirement. Steele said, quote, "The fact that he is being released back into our community is unconscionable. We must take this threat to our community very seriously and ensure that everyone in Orange County is aware of the individual's grave threat to our children," end quote. Smith was released on Tuesday from Caligna State Hospital in Fresno County, to which he was transferred at some point, Ed said Wednesday. He is expected to return to Orange County, where he used to live and still has ties. So they don't even know where this guy is right now. Spitzer said, quote, "This sexual predator has repeatedly testified under oath that he will reoffend if he's released, and we should believe him," end quote. What more do you need? He's saying, yes, if you release me, I'm going to reoffend. It's very rare that you ever get like an honest pedophile like that. But he's actually saying, if you release me, I'm going to reoffend. So what do? Oh, okay, well, see you later then. Bye-bye. Back into the community you go. Spitzer also said, quote, "As a state legislator, I was the author and founder of the State of California Sex Offender Management Board and the author of Megan's Law on the Internet, which allows the public to see where these sex offenders are so that they can protect themselves and their families. The public has an absolute right to know that he is coming back into our community, and we will do everything we can to prevent another child from being harmed." So it's absolutely sick stuff, but unfortunately, this is far from the only case of this. This is happening quite a bit. I don't even know if this is the most horrific case that we're going to look at today. It was one of them to me, and I think maybe it's just because it's fresh. You know, it just happened. And chances are this is going to keep happening because the past couple of months, pedophiles are just being released left and right. I mean, what is going on here? It looks, I'm not saying it is, but it looks like it's on purpose. It looks like this was all planned and coordinated to release these people back into the community. What I think is happening is I think it's part of this push to normalize pedophilia, like we talked about in the last video. It's part of that. It's part of this push to see pedophilia as nothing more than a mental disorder, and so we should have compassion for them, which is ridiculous. Actually, CNN just ran a piece with, of course, Don Lemon, where they had a so-called, an alleged doctor saying that this is that basically we need to have compassion for these people because it's a mental disorder. They can't help it. They're born this way and they can't help it. Okay, so if they can't help it and they're always going to be a constant danger to society, why don't we just lock them up right away then? You know, why even, you could take that argument in a different way, because these are the same people that will say kids with Down syndrome, it's better that they're aborted. You know, they can't help that they have Down syndrome. It's more compassionate if they're aborted, and then we can do away with Down syndrome, like some of the Northern European countries have done. They claim that, like, I think Sweden might have been one of them. I don't remember exactly which countries, but they say that they have totally done away with Down syndrome. No, they haven't. They just kill everybody who has Down syndrome. Yet that same standard doesn't apply with pedophiles. They're not like, okay, well, once somebody is a pedophile, the compassionate thing to do is put them out of their misery because they can't be helped. They're always going to be this way and they can't change. No, they're not saying that. Society has to conform around these pedophiles. We got to just get used to the idea that pedophilia is a thing and we need to accept it. That's what they're doing. That's what they're pushing for. So of course they're going to start releasing pedophiles. That's going to be the first to be released. And it's happening right now. Here's another one. And they tried to say that this was COVID, but as you will see, COVID had nothing to do with this. Okay, this comes from ABC 7 News, so not even like a right-wing publication, but it says 7 high-risk sex offenders released from Orange County Jail's DA's office issues community warning. District attorney says these kinds of high-risk offenders are the most dangerous kind of criminal, and they're likely to reoffend, but they've been released. And again, California, big surprise. Santa Ana, California, the Orange County District Attorney's Office. Again, this is not the same story. The story that we just looked at is not a part of this story. These are two separate stories. The individual that we just looked at, I don't even want to call him a man. The individual that we just looked at, you're not going to find his name in this story as one of these 7. This is how frequently this is happening. And then right there in Orange County, again, what is Newsom doing? He's like a pedophile apologist at this point, just letting him go. And then focusing on masks and shutting down churches and telling people they can't even have home church services now. They can't even meet at home to talk about Jesus. That's how sick and evil this Newsom guy is. But pedophiles, they're free to go. Sex offenders, child rapists, they're free to go. That's the kind of people apparently he wants in his communities. But not his communities, because of course he's going to have private security. He's going to live in a nice part of town. But for all of you underdwellers that he's in charge of, he's going to grace you and bless you with pedophiles running rampant in your streets. So 7 of these degenerates just got released. Orange County District Attorney's Office on Tuesday. This was when was this, like a month ago or something? April 29th, so a couple of months ago, at the time of this recording, issued a warning after 7 high-risk sex offenders were recently released early from county jails. The sex offenders were let out this month by Court Commissioner Joseph Dane, despite being charged with tampering with their GPS monitoring devices, and DA's office said in the news release. So we looked at that quote, and it's the same DA, Todd Spitzer. He said, quote, "They are doing everything they can to avoid detection by the parole officers assigned to monitor them so they can potentially commit additional sex offenses. These are not the kind of people who should be getting a break." Keep this Todd Spitzer guy in prayer. I don't know anything about him, but he is fighting a battle here, and we need more people like him that are willing to call a spade, that are willing to call out these people for who they are and try to keep them locked up. Again, I don't know anything about the guy, but at least for that, keep him in prayer. So Orange County Sheriff Don Barnes contended that there was no reason for the early release because jails are not currently overcrowded, adding that there are measures in place to allow for physical distancing and quarantining of inmates. Barnes said in a Wednesday statement, quote, "These inmates were released by court order and are not in any way connected to the measures I have taken to limit the spread of COVID-19 in the Orange County Jail. We have responsibly created the capacity needed in the jail to house sex offenders and other dangerous criminals. I oppose efforts that excuse criminal behaviors and jeopardize the safety of our community," end quote. So he's saying he's already got measures in place to house these people. So if they're saying that it's COVID related, then that's not the case. Now, again, that's his word. You know, we don't know. For all we know, maybe Barnes is lying and he hasn't really done anything. I guess that's possible, but I think it's far more likely that he's probably telling the truth, and there really is no and even if he did nothing and there was some risk of these pedophiles catching COVID, fine, let them catch COVID. I would much rather them catch COVID in jail than having them rape our children out in the streets, just being let free. You know, what's the lesser of two evils here? That even if that was the case, even if they were released because of, you know, concerns about social distancing in jail, that is so ridiculous and stupid. You know, if you're going to commit a crime like that, you waive your rights to any kind of dignity or decency, or you should expect that you're probably going to get sick in the jail. You know, you're not going to get quality health care there, nor should you. So the easy thing is don't rape kids, and then you won't have to go to jail and deal with that. Oh my gosh, it's just sick. But again, there's this push to normalize this stuff, say that they can't help it. But as I said in the last video, they absolutely can help it. They can help it. Who says they can't? Why can't they? How could you possibly know that they can't help it? Can you crawl in their head? And then, they would say to me, well, how can you say that they can? And I would say, nope, the human condition, human beings in every other way are able to control what they like and don't like. If there's something you don't like, you can take measures to like it. Or if there's something that you like and don't want to anymore, you can take measures to not like it. There are foods that I used to hate that I really like now. There are cartoons that I used to love as a kid and I hate now. There's a lot of foods I hated as a kid and I love now. I mean, it's the whole like-dislike thing. It's really subjective and it changes over time. That's a human condition. So if somebody's going to say, well, they can't help it, then they're the ones, the burden of proof is on them, because all available evidence on how human beings work says that they can help it if they actually wanted to. But to say that they can't and that somehow it's dangerous to even try, no, I don't accept that, and neither should you. We should not accept that. They have the burden of proof is on them. The burden of proof is not on us to prove that they can help it. And by the way, to prove it, all you would need to do is find one case of somebody who is attracted to minors who isn't now. But again, how do you prove that? Because we're just going by their word. There's no, as far as I'm aware, I don't think there's a brain scan that you can do to tell if somebody's attracted to what. I don't think it works that way. So here are the 7 sex offenders who were released. This happened this short amount of time, between April 7th and April 22nd. And they were identified in the community warning issued. So Louis Joel Ramirez, 27, of Costa Mesa, who has a history of sexual battery, assault with a deadly weapon, resisting a peace officer, burglary, possessing a leaded cane, a deadly weapon, and who prosecutors say has violated his parole 4 times since 2019. James Franklin Bowling, 50, of Orange, who has a history of lewd conduct in public place, repeated convictions for failing to register as a sex offender, repeated convictions for being a sex offender on school grounds, possession of a controlled substance and paraphernalia, and has allegedly violated parole twice since February. Oh, yeah, release him. Rudy William Grieta Magdaleno, 39, of Anaheim, who has a history of child molestation, indecent exposure, assault, battery, criminal threats, and inflicting injury on an elder adult, and who prosecutors say violated parole 5 times since 2017. Jeez. That's 3 years. 5 times in 3 years? Calvin Curtis Coleman, 52, of Santa Ana, who has a history of lewd conduct in a public place and has allegedly violated parole 3 times since 2019. In a year, possibly less than a year, depending when the date was. Kyle Albert Winton, 40, of Mission Viejo, who has a history of child molestation, criminal threats to cause great bodily injury or death, resisting a peace officer, DUI, and hit and run with property damage, and has allegedly violated parole once. Jose Adrian Oregal, 46, of Santa Ana, who has a history of unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor, oral copulation of a person under the age of 18, great bodily injury, and being a second striker, and who prosecutors claim has violated parole 6 times since June of 2019. And Mario Ernesto Sandoval, 45, of Stanton, who has a history of sexual battery, touching for sexual arousal, indecent exposure, assault on a peace officer, and assault, and allegedly violated parole once this year. Now here's a tweet statement from Sheriff Don Barnes, and he says it's clarifying information that was reported inaccurately. So he says, and again, this is from Sheriff Don Barnes. He says, it has been incorrectly reported in the media that my department authorized the recent releases of 7 registered sex offenders from Orange County Jail. That is inaccurate. These inmates were released by court order and are not in any way connected to the measures I have taken to limit the spread of COVID-19 in Orange County Jail. We have responsibly created the capacity needed for the jail to house sex offenders and dangerous criminals. I oppose efforts that excuse criminal behavior and jeopardize the safety of our community. So good on him for that, but they're still out there. And there's plenty of stories of this. Let's look at another one. Georgia man who was sentenced to 1,000 years for child porn gets parole. He's out. He was sentenced. He was sentenced to 1,000 years, and he was only in for a few years, and now he's out now. Can you imagine that? Our system on how they deal with pedophiles or people with child porn is so relaxed and so just nothing. I mean, what's the point in even having a justice system if they can't? I mean, it's the most basic, easy to understand that, you know, difference between right and wrong kind of thing there is. It's disgusting. But again, here's another one. And the reason I'm showing you these stories is, for one thing, to alert you to how dangerous the world is around us. Two, to show you that these people are being released. And three, to show you how minimal the sentences are in the first place, how easy it is for these people to get parole. And what about the victims? You know, the perpetrators are treated as victims by our society today. But what about the real victims? What about the children? Now they have to live in fear because their abuser is out on the streets again. I can't even imagine. What a horrifying thing to have to live with day after day. These kids need our prayers. A former Troup County commissioner, here's a picture of him so you know what he looks like. A former Troup County commissioner, once called a prolific collector of child pornography, will have a chance to spend the rest of his 1,000-year prison sentence on parole. The State of Pardons and Paroles released Peter Mallory on parole May 27, 3 weeks after an appeals court found the sentence for Mallory's 2012 condition was appropriate. So he got 8 of the 1,000, and what, he's totally reformed now? Like he's just a different person now? He had 1,000 years. District Attorney Herb Cranford said he opposed the decision, but was powerless to stop it. Cranford on Tuesday released a statement explaining his opposition after he said several members of the Troup County community expressed concerns over Mallory's release. Mallory, 72, a former owner of LaGrange television station WCAG-TV, was convicted of 60 counts of sexual exploitation of children. 60 counts. 60 of sexual exploitation of children, 3 counts of invasion of privacy, and 1 count of tampering with evidence in December 2012 after a 3-week trial. He was charged as a result of a LaGrange Police Department investigation initiated in February 2011. According to prosecutors, police were alerted to more than 600 suspected child porn files linked to a computer in LaGrange, which led them to the television station Mallory operated. 600 child porn files. More than 26,000 files of child pornography were seized. Talk about an obsession. I mean, talk about an addiction. Talk about just a sick 26,000. How are there enough minutes in a lifetime to view all of that? That just blows my mind. But 8 years, he's probably fully reformed. Yeah, right. Cranford said in a prior news release, quote, "The evidence demonstrated that Mallory knowingly and intentionally sought out, gathered, downloaded, and saved these images and videos of children being raped, tortured, and sexually exploited." End quote. The invasion of privacy count stemmed from a hidden camera Mallory installed in his office that he used to secretly record young women. At sentencing, a few months after the trial, Coweta Judicial Circuit Supreme Court Judge Dennis Blackman called Mallory, quote, "probably the most prolific collector of child pornography in the entire world," end quote. I don't even like how that's phrased. That makes it sound like it's a virtue, or just, it makes it sound like it's like some little quirk about him. Oh, he's probably the most prolific collector of child pornography. What a prolific collector. A collector. He just collects it. It's just a collection. It's a hobby. It's just disgusting. His conviction and sentence was affirmed by the Court of Appeals on May 7th. Cranford advocated against Mallory's release in a December letter to the parole board. Mallory was the first eligible for parole in December 2019, 7 years after his conviction. According to a parole board spokesman, Mallory's eligibility was determined by Georgia's sentencing laws for consecutive sentences, despite the length of his sentence. The board reconsidered the case and set a new parole month of December 2022. Cranford said he opposed parole now or any time in the future, and said the Troup County community would be offended if Mallory was released after serving just 7 years of his 1,000-year sentence. He said in the letter, quote, "The evidence shows that Mallory is sexually deviant and commits these crimes by compulsion as much as by choice." And of course, It's by choice. Nobody's forcing him to commit these acts. Nobody's forcing him to download child porn. Even if he's got some desire that he can't control, which I don't believe. I believe people can control their desires if they really want to, if they work at it. You know, otherwise, that to say that they can't help it, that's to say that the power that, you know, Jesus on the cross, that power is insufficient. It can't change hearts. It can't change souls. You can't really repent of your sins. It's blasphemy is what it is. They absolutely can change. And I used this example before, but I used to love drugs and alcohol, and I loved it and I did it. So I had the compulsion and I made the choice. But now I hate both. And I don't love, it's not like I still like it, I just don't do it. No, I don't like it. There's nothing in me that has any desire to drink or do drugs again. You can change your life. You need your spirit to lead your flesh instead of your flesh leading the spirit, like the Bible says. But of course, many of these people don't believe in the Bible, so that's why they think that if you have a desire, you can't help it and you shouldn't even try, which is just absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, he also said in the letter, quote, "In the current digital age, no amount of supervision can stop a compulsive sexual deviant like Mallory from seeking out the most heinous images and videos of small children being sexually abused," end quote. And people like this Mallory guy, they're creating a market for this stuff. This is why children are abused. And by the way, if anybody watching, if you view any pornography, even consensual adult pornography, you're contributing to this too. And we talked about that in the last video, but that is a main driver for child sex trafficking and child pornography and all of that stuff. It's all the same market. It contributes to the same market. There are many articles on exactly that, and you can look them up. And we're going to talk about that a little later, but because there's more that I have to say that I didn't get a chance to in the last video. So continuing on, 2 victims involved in the case are also opposed parole, Cranford said. At a minimum, they asked that Mallory be banned from Troup County and from contacting them if he was released. Cranford said, quote, "Mallory's crimes did not allow for the state to seek or the trial court to impose a sentence without parole eligibility, and parole is a power exercised exclusively by the State Board of Pardons and Paroles," end quote. In an April response to Cranford, the parole board said earlier release was possible due to performance incentive credits. So basically, what, if he behaves? Board spokesman Steve Hayes and Mallory actually served 5 months in prison beyond the date he was eligible for release by law, and the board followed its guideline system to determine his parole. So Hayes said in an email to AJC.com, which is where the story is from, quote, "The clemency recommendation was for a parole release at eligibility. Mallory was released 5 months later. His parole release is not COVID-19 related." 5 months. I mean, it's like, well, hey, he got out late. He didn't get out earlier. He could have got out earlier. He was there 5 months longer. What more do you want? Well, we want him to never see the light of day again. For the remainder of his sentence, Mallory will be required to register as a sex offender. But as we've seen, many of these sex offenders don't register. And they refuse to do it time and time again before they're actually caught or any kind of consequence comes from that. And will be subject to having his parole revoked if he violates the law or the conditions of his release. Subject to having, so that's not saying that he will have his parole revoked. It's just, it could happen. It likely won't. He's banished from Troup County. It doesn't matter. He'll go do it somewhere else. Is online electronic monitoring and cannot contact any victims. He can if he wants, you know. He may not be able to. He's not legally allowed to, but it's not like it's impossible for him to do that. The board is confident he will be closely monitored by the Georgia Department of Community Supervision. Yeah, right. I don't believe it. Here's another one. Utah CEO gets 210 days in jail for having 13,000 files of infant rape and child rape and bestiality. 210 days in jail. That's all he gets. It was supposed to be 15 years, and that isn't even enough time. Salt Lake City. Oh, and there is here. This is from KUTV.com. You can go there, and they have a link to an online petition to remove Judge Douglas Hogan, and that's who to blame for this. The petition is collecting signatures after his 200-day sentencing of former Utah Tech CEO and admitted pedophile Douglas Saltzman on Thursday. So this happened recently, too. This was May 14th. I'm telling you, this is all just within the past couple of months. All this stuff is happening. A judge sentenced admitted pedophile and former Utah CEO Douglas Saltzman to 210 days in jail and 48 months probation on Thursday for possessing more than 13,000 files of graphic child pornography, some of which involved rape and bestiality. Children actually had to suffer the most horrendous things imaginable just so this guy could have his moments of pleasure. It's unbelievable that these people would ever see the light of day again. It's unbelievable to me. Saltzman was facing 1 to 15 years in prison. He didn't even get the 1 year. That was the minimum, 1 to 15 years. 1 was the minimum sentence. He didn't even get that. And 15 years wouldn't have been long enough anyway. And a $10,000 fine for each of the 3 second-degree felonies for which he pled guilty. Here's a picture of him so you know what he looks like if you're viewing this. Saltzman, 40, was originally facing 11 charges related to the seizure of more than 13,000 files of graphic child pornography in August 2019. Newly revealed in court Thursday was the fact that some of the child pornography files Saltzman admitted to viewing and sexually gratifying himself to feature bestiality. And how long have we said all this sexual perversion, every time we legalize something new, it's slippery slope. It's going to lead to the legalization of pedophilia and bestiality. And everyone's saying, oh, no, you're crazy. Well, what are they doing now? What are they doing now? They're releasing these people. They're trying to get it labeled as a mental disorder, which it's not. And, by the way, give it enough time. If it's labeled as a medical disorder, give it enough time, and they'll demand that it's removed as a medical disorder because that's too insulting. It's too insulting, and it should be celebrated. That's where we're headed. Considered by many to be a computer genius, Saltzman was the founder of a now-defunct blockchain and cryptocurrency company, which was based in Sandy. Judge Douglas Hogan, however, suspended those recommendations, giving Saltzman 210 days in jail. And this is what he said. Here's what he said. Quote, this is the judge that you should go sign that petition about. Quote, I'm going to suspend the imposition of the statutory terms. I'm going to place Mr. Saltzman on probation with adult probation and parole for a period of 48 months. Consistent with the parties' stipulated agreement, Mr. Saltzman will serve 210 days in jail. Credit for the time served up to this point is 148. That leaves an outstanding balance to be served. Upon completing the total of 210 days, he may be released to adult probation and parole and supervision. He's to check in immediately, which means within 48 hours he'll be subject to Group A sex offender conditions. He'll need to undergo and complete successfully sex offender treatment and therapy. He will also need to undergo a drug and alcohol evaluation and comply with any recommendation treatment. Mr. Saltzman is going to be incumbent upon you when you meet with your probation officer. Make sure you completely understand all these conditions. Look at all of this stuff now. How much easier would it have been to just put him in jail? Put him in jail, keep him there. You know, that's not as much money on the taxpayer. But now the taxpayer has to pay for all of this stuff that's not going to be effective. How many people, how many pedophiles go to jail and then go through all this therapy and treatment? How many of them end up reoffending? Quite a bit. This does nothing except spend taxpayer money for nothing, just so they can be released and allowed to prey on the community again. It's sick, and you guys absolutely should go and sign that petition. Get that judge removed. Here's another one. This just happened, yesterday, 2 days ago, at the time of this recording. This is from Washington Examiner. Man who led protests supporting Black Lives Matter arrested on child pornography charges. So that's why they want to defund the police so bad. A man who led Black Lives Matter protests in New Hampshire last month has been indicted on child pornography charges, according to a new report. I'm I will bet that he will be released soon. Chris DeVries, 37, of Jackson, New Hampshire, led a protest on June 21, dubbed Skate Away the Hate, which encouraged participants to ride skateboards down a local highway to show support for the Black Lives Matter movement. Because of his association with Black Lives Matter especially, I bet this guy gets a very reduced sentence, if any at all, and he'll probably be let go on probation or something. DeVries said during the event, quote, "If we divest funds from police and prison systems, we all benefit. Those funds can go to local communities and social services." Yeah, we see why he wants to defund that stuff. If there's no prisons, he can look up all the child porn he wants. Heck, if he wants to, he doesn't have to stop at child porn. He can just go and rape kids. Who's going to stop him? There's no prisons. There's no police anymore. That's his social service for the community. DeVries has been charged with 6 counts of possessing child abuse images, 1 count of possession of psilocybin mushrooms, and 1 of falsifying physical evidence, local police said. The child pornography charges carry a sentence of up to 15 years in prison and a $4,000 fine. He's not going to get 15 years. Now, I will be surprised if he sets 1 foot in a jail cell. Or in a prison cell, after being sentenced. The drug offenses are punishable by up to 7 years in prison. The drug offenses, he had some shrooms. That can get him 7 years, but he'll probably not have to serve that for the child pornography, for possessing materials, for possessing the rape of children, for contributing to the market of the rape of children. But the shrooms give him 7 years. That wouldn't surprise me. I swear all this stuff is so backwards. And I'm not saying shrooms are good at all. You shouldn't do them at all. I mean, I'm totally fine with people going to prison for that. But it's just just the way that they frame these things, the way way that 1 sentence of 7 years for shrooms, but then the pornography charges is only a sentence of up to 15 years, which he likely won't even get that. It'll probably be like the other guy who's supposed to do 1 year, but ended up getting out in 210 days. But because this guy is connected to BLM, I don't think he's gonna get anything. All right. There's more that we got to look at. Before we do, I want to tell you a little bit about what we have going on at Daily Renegade. So I wrote about this. At dailyrenegade.com, we have a donate page. And if you donate there, it all goes to my son, Nathan, who has been diagnosed with leukemia. And he's been fighting it hard for, I think it's been about a year now. Maybe a little less. No, actually, I think it's a little more than a year. It's hard to tell time. It's just been so crazy. But so I was doing a Facebook post, and Facebook asked me if I wanted to do a fundraiser. So I was like, hey, that sounds good. Let's try to do a fundraiser. So Facebook offered one to me. It was pitching me on this fundraising idea. So I tried setting up a fundraiser on Facebook for our 6-year-old son Nathan's battle with leukemia, and they're saying that I violated their community standards several times, so I can't do a fundraiser. I have, as far as my recent memory, I have never had a strike for community guidelines or community standards. I have not been put in Facebook jail in, I think, 5 years. I haven't had any notifications of any problems whatsoever, but I've been suspecting for a while Facebook's been shadow banning some of my posts. I know for a fact they do. There are some posts where I can just say something like, oh, I accidentally swallowed some toothpaste this morning. Yeah, such is life. And I'll get 500 comments on that. But then I share an article or a video, or I just say something against pedophilia, and I might get 20 or 30. But it's nowhere. I have 5,000 people, following me on Facebook, 5,000 Facebook friends. And I know all of you guys, you don't see my posts because Facebook doesn't allow it. Well, apparently, Facebook thinks that, apparently, they have been penalizing me for breaking community standards, but they never bothered to tell me about it. So I couldn't do the fundraiser. So I wrote, I've never been notified of violating anything. I haven't been in Facebook jail in about 5 years. Censorship to the extreme. This is what unwarranted shadow banning looks like. If you want to help Nathan, you can do so at dailyrenegade.com/donate. And here's the link. I'll show you guys real quick just what it looks like. So again, you just go to dailyrenegade.com and then you can click on the donate link. It's right here. Very easy to find. There's a GoFundMe right here that you can donate to. This yellow donate button is direct PayPal. You can do that. There's a Patreon, and then if you want to send a check or money order, there's a P.O. box. So we have several ways, but this would greatly help us. He has years of a very difficult battle ahead of him, and because we're trying to do like more natural things, it's not covered by insurance. His main treatment, it's hit or miss, but the natural stuff that we're doing, that's crazy expensive. It's not like how it is for you or me if we're just maintaining our health and we have a regimen of supplements, and it's still pricey, but it's manageable. It's not like that. For him, it's extremely, extremely expensive. So we're asking people, if you can donate, go to dailyrenegade.com/donate. Also, while you're there, become a member and you get lots of great content. Look at all these shows we have. We have a ton of shows here, so you're going to find something you like. It's not just Peck Report. We got Radical Christian with Drew Graffia. We got Detox Babylon, which is like a documentary style type of show. The Christian Marauder. We even have we have stuff for women, men, young, old, everything in between. Beginning and end, Signed, Sealed, Delivered. We have a Apollineering, Beauty in the Bible, Moms of Miracles, Through the Black Uncensored, Christian Contrarian, Get Real, Christ Curls and Conversations. That is a great show, especially if you are addicted to pornography and you're trying to quit. Look up Bree Marie Atkins. She had a similar problem, and her whole ministry is built on helping people get free from their sin of pornography. And so we host her here at Daily Renegade. Eye for Prophecy, which is just a quick rundown of the week's prophetic headlines, headlines, things that are happening in the news that are prophetic in some way. So we have all of this, and we have a lot more. We have articles that you can read that are exclusive for members only. So it is only 100. I can show you the plans and pricing. It's only $10 a month, or the best value, $100 a year. That is the best value because you get 2 months for free. You pay for it once. You don't have to think about it for a whole year. And you get all of the same stuff, so it's just not as expensive. So I suggest you get that if you're going to do it. And it really helps us out. We also support other ministries as well. So your membership money isn't just going to us. It is going to us to help us build up the website more and keep this ministry going. But we also support other ministries, such as a couple of ministries that minister to the Jewish people in Israel, try to witness to them and show them who their Messiah is. A children's hospital and a pro-life ministry called Created Equal, which are just excellent, wonderful ministry. So again, dailyrenegade.com. Go there, get a membership today, $10 a month or $100 a year. $100 a year is the best value. Okay. So we have more to get to. I don't know how many of you have seen the documentary that was really popular on Netflix about the child Gabriel Fernandez, who died at the hands of his parents. He was ruthlessly abused, and he lost his life. He died, unfortunately. But social workers didn't do anything about it, or couldn't. Well, there's some news on that, and I'm putting that in with this because it's child abuse, and it really shows how our society looks at children. Our children should be the most precious thing that we have, in life. They're the most innocent, the most pure, the most precious thing that we have. But our society hates kids, and I'll never understand that. Our society absolutely hates kids. Why do you think every comedian has jokes about how the whiny baby in the airplane or the kids running around in a restaurant. Every comedian talks about. Why? Because he's tapping into a common hate that everybody just hates kids. Because what? Because they're annoying? Because they're loud? How annoying do you think we are to God sometimes? If a little baby is annoying to us, how infinitely more annoying are we to the creator of the universe? It really puts things in perspective. There's nothing annoying about a child in that way where the child should be a subject of hate. And there's no reason that those jokes should be seen as funny. The only reason those comedians get so popular is because a lot of people feel that way. A lot of people hate their kids. We have a society that just hates kids, especially babies, especially the unborn. And you see it all over. So I'm including this case in what we're talking about today because this is a perfect example of exactly the type of society that breeds things like child abuse and pedophilia, and this is why you have pedophile apologists now saying it's a mental disorder. But there's some news in this case that's probably going to infuriate you. It did me. Case dismissed against social workers charged in death of Gabriel Fernandez. Fox5Atlanta.com. So a judge Thursday dismissed charges against 4 social workers who were accused of failing to protect an 8-year-old Antelope Valley boy whose mother and her boyfriend were convicted of his May 2013 torture death. The case was featured in the Netflix documentary, The Trials of Gabriel Fernandez. District Attorney Jackie Lacey announced in February that state law is not on our side in the case of Stephanie Rodriguez and Patricia Clement and their supervisors, Kevin Baum and Gregory Merritt, after a 3-justice panel from California's 2nd District Court of Appeal ruled that Los Angeles Superior Court Judge George G. Lomely should have granted the defense's motion to dismiss the case. The 4 were charged in March 2016 with 1 felony count each of child abuse and falsifying public records in connection with Gabriel Fernandez's death. David Green, a social worker and union representative for Southern California Public Service Workers, released the following statement, quote, "What happened to Gabriel Fernandez was an unspeakable tragedy. It exposed problems in the child welfare system that led to important reforms like better training and mentoring, the reduction of caseloads so social workers weren't trying to juggle protecting up to 60 children at once. It's these systemic reforms, not scapegoating individual social workers, that will keep children safe," end quote. I disagree. Okay, it's either these social workers had no power and they literally could not do anything, which I don't believe. If I was a social worker and I knew something like that was going on, I don't care if I have to drive to the house myself and get the kid out of that circumstance. I will. I don't care if I have to go there with a police officer myself and lose my job over it. To save a child's life, that is a worthy sacrifice. But it's either they had no power whatsoever, and if that's the case, why do we even have that as a job? Why is that even a profession? Why is that a position? If they have no power, what do? What's their job then? If they can't do anything, it's either that or they are responsible in some way. And I think the latter. Quote, "My office vigorously pursued those who directly caused Gabriel's death and those who failed to intervene to protect him." End quote. And this is from the county's top prosecutor. He said it in a written statement released in February. Also, these social workers, make an example of them. So all this is doing is incentivizing other social workers to do the same thing, to get lazier. I mean, government jobs already breed a type of laziness anyway. Not saying that all government workers are lazy, but it does seem to attract and breed that type of mentality. Make an example of them. If I was a social worker and I knew that one of my social worker friends just got sent to prison because he ignored several attempts to alert him about abuse going on and a child died, I would be de-incentivized. I don't know the word for that, but I would not be incentivized to let things slip through. I would be more motivated to make sure I was doing my job properly. You would think the death of a child would be enough to do that, but again, our culture, for some reason, our society hates children. And I mean society, not culture. I believe that we have one society made up of two cultures right now. And I've talked about that before. But while we prevailed against those who inflicted the injuries, the appellate court rejected our theory of criminal liability against the social workers who my office believed had a duty to protect Gabriel. Of course they did. What is their position if not that? What is their job? So there's more to the story if you want to look it up. There's a lot to it, but I just wanted to let you guys know what was going on in that case, in case you didn't hear about it already. So that kind of thing happens more often than is actually reported. Ex-VP of major military contractor DynCorp and senior Pentagon official guilty for child sex abuse. And again, July 13th, 2020. So another one and he'll probably be released. DynCorp has been implicated in trafficking children all over the world. Why have they not been properly investigated? And this comes from collectiveevolution.com. So retired Army Major General James Graziopline has been given 20 years for aggravated sexual battery. He's been in jail for approximately 18 months, so he'll probably be released in a week or two. He was expected to be released on Wednesday. See? He was expected to be released on Wednesday and will serve 20 years of probation, according to Elmore's lawyer, Ryan Gilds. Okay, so he's been given 20 years for aggravated... When did this happen? All right, he's been implicated in multiple sex abuse allegations over many years. This specific case had to do with his daughter, who first reported to Army officials in 2015 that her father reportedly molested and raped her throughout her childhood. Okay, so it's not like he's been in jail for 20 years and they're letting him out. The first time that it was reported was 5 years ago, and that doesn't mean that's when he was actually arrested. That's just when it was first reported. So at most, he's been in jail 5 years. At most. He was given 20 years. He's only been in jail for 18 months, and he was expected to be released on Wednesday, and he will serve 20 years of probation. He got out after 18 months, and he was supposed to do 20 years. See, they're being released. What is going on here? Why is this happening? It's like all of these pedophiles are being released at the same time. The military launched an investigation and found enough evidence, even 30 years later, to move toward a trial in 2017. Graziopline retired in 2005 after a career that included stints as a commander within the 82nd Airborne Division and senior staff positions at the Pentagon. He also became a vice president at the contractor DynCorp International, but is no longer with the company, obviously. So there's more opinion-based kind of stuff here with this whole case if you wanna read through it. Now this isn't just here in America. Well, actually, we'll get to that story in a minute. This one I wanted to look at. This just happened. A Georgia father was actually arrested after attacking a man in his 14-year-old daughter's room, police say. And he beat, choked, and fired gunshots at the man. Now, when you read the story, I don't think he was necessarily firing gunshots at him, even though he would... I mean, if somebody's in my daughter's room, absolutely they're going to get shot. But let's it sounds more like he was just firing them in the air, like, hey, don't come back. But let's read the story. A Georgia man is under arrest. This guy actually got arrested for this. I'm not talking about the pedophile. I'm talking about the man who defended his daughter, the good father who beat this guy up, who was in his daughter's room. The father got arrested. This is how backwards our legal system is. A Georgia man is under arrest for severely beating and choking a man he found inside his 14-year-old daughter's bedroom, authorities said. Ismail Casillas, I don't know. 41 found Kiwan. Oh my gosh, these names. Kiwantrezes Humphreys. We're calling him Humphreys. 20 inside his daughter's room in their Coweta County home on July 4th and erupted in anger. Investigators told WAGA 24 TV in Atlanta. So imagine you have a 14-year-old daughter and you find a 20-year-old man in her bedroom. What would you do? I would do the same thing. And this guy wasn't invited in or anything. It's not like they were having a nice dinner. Let's continue. He began to choke and beat Humphreys, knocking out some of his teeth in the process, authorities said. He then asked his wife for a gun and followed Humphreys after he jumped out of a window in an effort to escape. According to the news outlet, in the front yard, Casillas allegedly resumed the beating and fired several shots through the neighborhood as Humphreys fled on foot. Investigators said Casillas' actions in the yard crossed the line. What about Humphreys, who crossed the line? Since Humphreys, who is also known as Man, was fleeing and not a threat. Of course, you don't know that he's not a threat. What if he's when somebody's running away, you don't know where they're going, what they're doing. What if he was running back to get a gun from one of his friends, or running back to get a weapon? What if he was just running around the house to come back and attack this guy an hour later in his sleep? They can't say that he wasn't a threat. Once you decide to break into somebody's house, you're a threat. Once you decide to enter the bedroom of somebody's 14-year-old daughter, you are a threat. That doesn't go away just because you're not in the room or on the property anymore. You're still a threat. Like, again, this culture, this cultural shift we have of making the perpetrators into victims is sickening. No, he did not cross the line. And we don't know what fired through the neighborhood meant. Was he like firing it through where anybody could have got shot, or was he firing it in the air? My guess would be in the air, but it doesn't say, so we don't know. Now, obviously, if he was firing literally through the neighborhood and through people's houses, that's very reckless, and you shouldn't be doing that. Somebody could get killed, but that's not what it's saying happened. And you know, if that did happen, they would be saying it. Through the neighborhood, to me, that just sounds like a doublespeak thing for he probably fired in the air just to make a lot of noise and warn the guy, hey, if you're thinking about getting a weapon, I have a gun, so don't come back. Casillas is charged with aggravated assault, and Humphreys faces a child molestation charge. Calls to the Coweta County Sheriff's Office were not immediately returned, as well as messages to Casillas' family through a GoFundMe page set up to cover his legal fees. Investigators said Humphreys was in a relationship with the teen girl and had climbed through her bedroom window. Amazing how they leave that at the very bottom. Shouldn't that be at the very top of the headline? I mean, whether he broke in or was invited in, that's a pretty big detail to put to like hide at the very bottom. And this is Fox News of all places, but they've been kind of slipping a lot too lately. I swear this stuff is everywhere. It's not just in America though. This is everywhere in the world. Now this is a horrifying story, but this just shows there's some spirit of like sexual violence that's like running rampant all over the world. And we're seeing it in our country, but we're seeing it in other countries too. 5-year-old boy is, and this is from Daily Mail, brutally gang raped on a remote Australian beach by a group of children, all aged under 13. So children aged under 13 raped a 5-year-old boy, brutally, before alleged victim is rushed to hospital with horrific injuries. So a 5-year-old boy has allegedly been gang raped by a group of children, all aged under 13, on a remote beach in an Aboriginal community in far north Queensland. Now, I don't know much about Aboriginal communities or what they're all about. So what little I know is basically what's in this article, which isn't much. The attack unfolded, but it doesn't matter what they're. It's evil is evil. You're raping, it's just evil. But what is going on in that community for the children to think that to do this? And I'm telling you, whatever's going on, we're going to start seeing that here. It's not just confined over there because they're different people and they have different No. Whatever, they're just a little bit further ahead of us on this whole thing. We're going to start seeing that kind of thing happen here because it's the same evil spirits that are inspiring this stuff. We're going to see children raping children here in this country if we don't do anything about it. And if we keep indulging in this over-sexualized culture, in our entertainment and our media, and we're going to get to that. But that's what's driving this whole thing, the over-sexualization that our country has. And when we participate in that, we're allowing for these kinds of things to happen. The attack unfolded in Nepranum on a northwest coast of Cape York in Queensland on July 1st. Police allege the 4 boys accused of the rape have been taken into custody. While the 800-strong community has banned them from returning to the town, the alleged attack was so violent the 5-year-old required emergency medical treatment and was airlifted to Cairns Hospital some 800 kilometers away. Community members said the disturbing allegations have torn several families apart and reopened wounds from a shocking sex crime that happened 15 years earlier. So it's, apparently this happened something similar, some sort of sex crime happened 15 years earlier. One local said, quote, "These are big arguments about how this happened. It is creating big problems in the town. It's not the first time something like this has happened," end quote. The neighboring community of Aerocan, about 40 kilometers south of Nepranum, was at the center of nationwide outrage in 2006 when a 10-year-old girl was gang raped by 9 men aged between 13 and 25. So some of these were kids. Kids that... I just pray the Lord Jesus Christ comes quickly. This is getting ridiculous. The young girl was born to an alcoholic mother and suffered from a mild intellectual disability. So a disabled girl, and that's who they decided to rape. Not that it would have been any better if she wasn't disabled, but that just makes it all the sicker. Although the men all pleaded guilty to a litany of sexual offenses, the judge, see, here we go again. The judge spared them jail time and said the victim probably agreed to have sex with them. Can you believe that? This is where our culture is headed to. You think it's bad now. This is what's going to happen. Victim blaming. I want to read that again. Although the men all pleaded guilty to a litany of sexual offenses, the judge spared them jail time and said the victim probably agreed to have sex with them. A child can't agree to any sexual contact whatsoever. They don't know what's being asked of them. It is impossible. You have to be an adult to consent. Children can't consent. And again, if you think that this is just some weird backwards culture on the other side of the world and it's not going to happen here, you got another thing coming, because this is going to happen here if we don't do something about this. This is where we're headed. She ruled the men were also victims themselves. So apparently this judge is a woman, no less. You would expect a man to make a ruling like that, siding with the men rapists. No, this is a woman. She ruled that the men were also victims. The men were the rapists were victims themselves after growing up deprived and subjected to physical and sexual abuse at the hands of others in their community. So it seems like this is a big problem in this community. But again, it's a big problem in our own country, isn't it? It's this whole idea of making the perpetrators the victims. I don't care what you go through in your life. You don't get to hurt other people. Look, I have been through some horrendous stuff myself. A lot of people have. I have been through abuses that I don't talk about. That does not give me an excuse to then go and abuse other people. And if I know that, there's anybody can know that. It's not like I had some stellar upbringing. It's just common sense. It's right and wrong. It's, do you want to hurt people or not? And if you want to hurt people, you need to be removed from society. No convictions were recorded in the horrifying case, sparking fury across Australia. Then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd expressed his anger at the court's decision at the time. He said, quote, "I'm disgusted and appalled by the reports I've seen in today's newspapers on this case. My attitude of violence towards women and children, including sexual violence towards women and children, is one of zero tolerance." End quote. Due to the young age of the alleged offenders in Nepranum, police can use their discretion to determine how to proceed with prosecution. Throw them in jail. Get these people off the streets. I don't care how old they are. If they're that young, they have to learn that there's consequences to their actions. Maybe they've been raised in a community that tells them to do this stuff. Get them out of that community then. They need to be removed, taken on, not put in some other community, not just relocated. They need to really be removed out of society. Maybe it's a little different for a child. Maybe a child can have some hope at change. Really anybody can have hope at change. The problem is the church isn't doing enough to go and witness to people. Jesus Christ is what would fix all of this. When you have a relationship, and that's what I credit my own, like, getting over my own abuses too. I credit that solely to Jesus Christ. Without Jesus, I probably would be a very angry individual. And I would be self-absorbed. I would only be thinking of myself. I'd be selfish. I remember what I was like before I got serious about Jesus. And I wasn't a very pleasant person. I wasn't physically abusive or sexually abusive or anything like that, but I wasn't very pleasant to be around. I was extremely self-centered. I didn't care about anybody. I was depressed all the time. I basically hated everyone, and I hated myself more. I was a liar. I was just everyone in my life, I didn't get close to. I just lied to them constantly, and I kept trying to make them think I was something that I wasn't. I kept trying to make them think that I was like some kind of big shot. But what got me out of that wasn't some therapy program or somebody just reasoning with me. And I'm not saying that therapy is wrong. I've gone through Christian counseling myself and found it to be very beneficial, but it's got to be done. For me, it had to be done. And I think for everybody, it's got to be done through Jesus Christ. The only way that I can credit who I am today, all of the good things, it's Jesus. The bad things I'll own. Anything bad you see in me, that's me. Anything good you see in me, anything that is in compliance with God's will, that is Jesus. It's not me. But that's what happens when we have the Spirit of Christ living in us. He makes us better. He makes us, we want to be more like him. He helps us through that. So the only chance that these people have, that this world has, is accepting Jesus as their Savior. We as the church, we have to go out and preach the gospel to people. And apparently we're not doing a great job of it. And I'm not saying me and you personally. I'm not saying you personally, if you're listening to this. I'm just saying the church as a whole. I mean, we have 68% of men, Christian men, addicted to pornography right now. We have a lot of work to do just within our own ranks. It's like we're unfit to preach the gospel to the world, though we're not. But it seems like on the surface that we are, or we like to think that we are. But we're not. I mean, the Great Commission is not conditional. We're told, we're commanded to go and preach the gospel to all nations, make disciples. And I don't know how effectively we've been doing that or how much we've been doing that. So it says here, 10 is the age an offender can be found guilty of a crime, but if a child under 13 commits an offense, police can issue a caution. Another option is restorative justice, a tactic commonly used in indigenous communities, which normally involves extensive counseling, mediated meeting with the victim's family, and an apology to the victim. I just think these people got to be taken out of society. I mean, how else can you be sure that they're not going to commit the crime again when there's so many repeat offenders? The alleged Nepranom gang rape is the latest in a series of horrifying cases in remote Aboriginal communities. A 27-year-old man was sentenced to 13 years in prison in March for raping a 2-year-old girl in Tennant Creek in the Northern Territory while her mother was sleeping, in a crime that shocked Australia. The toddler suffered severe internal injuries in the 2018 attack and had to be flown to the Adelaide hospital where she underwent a blood transfusion. There's a lot I could say right now. Such incidents have raised concerns about child safety in remote indigenous communities. It's not just in indigenous communities. We're seeing it in our own country. You can't blame this on just somebody's culture and they're just allowing it. It's a human problem that we as humans are not taking control over or not taking ownership of. We're not holding these people accountable. It's not just this one community. It's all communities all over the world. They're letting this stuff slide. Like I said before, it's like a spirit of sexual abuse and violence has been released over the world, and we're just allowing it in. In 2016, a Griffith University study headed by Professor Stephen Smallbone examined the prevalence of sexual abuse in indigenous North Queensland community. It found sex crimes in Arukan were occurring at a rate of 6.6 times higher than the rest of Queensland, with the average age of victims just 14. But again, it may be happening more there, but the fact that it's happening isn't because this is just some other community. It happens in all communities. Maybe there's something about, maybe it's not policed well, it's policed worse in this community. That's why it's happening more. I don't know, but they can't, it's a convenient excuse to just say, well, those people are different. That's why they struggle with this. It's just like how we Protestants, we like to pretend that the Catholics are the ones that really deal with the pedophilia problem. It's Protestants too. It's everywhere. And it's because every group wants to ignore the fact that whatever group they belong to has a problem with it too. Everybody wants to ignore that conveniently. And then it never gets dealt with because of that. Because all we're doing is just pointing the finger at everybody else. And we're not taking ownership for any of it ourselves. And you might be thinking, well, I'm not involved in sexual abuse of any kind. I don't have a part in this. You might and not know it. Do you watch anything on TV that's sexually explicit in any way? That any form of entertainment that uses sex to entice the viewers to watch more? I mean, even just like low cut, tops on girls or whatever. Basically, every show that you watch is going to have some of that in there, right? We have got to turn our TVs off. Have you taken time to really get active in the fight against things like child sex trafficking? And I don't mean posting Chrissy Teigen tweets and saying what an awful person she is. That's not joining in the fight against child sex trafficking. I mean, really, really joining in it. Not just supporting ministries like Whispering Ponies Ranch that actually help kids who come out of child sex trafficking. Not just that, but taking a personal approach and saying, I no longer am going to support this sexualized culture we live in. Everywhere in this culture, sex sells, sex sells. If something is using sex to try to sell you, don't buy it, whatever it is. And I know it's hard because that's pretty much everything. But the only way that we turn this country around is to stop letting sex sell us. It's being cultivated, it's being allowed to thrive because sex sells, and we are allowing it to. We have freedom of choice in this. We don't have to buy stuff or engage in things that's sexual at all. We can save that for our wives or husbands. Terry Crews recently put out something that I thought was good, and there's a story, and I want to talk a little bit about what our role in this is before we call it a day. But this comes from Daily Wire. Terry Crews, he's a actor, but he's awesome, by the way. He's great. But as leftists call for defunding the police, actor Terry Crews has called for defunding of adult entertainment website Pornhub. So he actually said defund Pornhub. Defund Pornhub, the actor tweeted on Tuesday, tagging the anti-porn organization Fight the New Drug. Terry Crews has raised a lot of eyebrows over the past few weeks for criticizing the more radical elements of the Black Lives Matter movement, and his followers were not exactly enthusiastic about his newfound anti-porn stance either. We all should be anti-porn. It destroys the soul. It destroys families. It destroys homes. All for what? A few moments of pleasure. It is a completely. It's a sacrifice of so much important stuff just for a little bit here and now pleasure that fades away quickly, and then it's craved once again. One user said, "You may as well tweet all lives matter at this point." And Other people are saying that like porn is good, and they're talking about sex workers and stuff. Other users agreed with Terry Crews and has called it to fund Pornhub, though the actor gave no specifics on how the goal would be accomplished. So, you know, he had a lot of support with that. And you can read the whole story, but we absolutely should oppose Pornhub and all pornography, and stop contributing to this over-sexualized culture. If we're participants in it, then, I mean, we're participants in all of it. It's an all-or-none thing. Because it's all connected. It all feeds off of each other. That's why I say, if you're watching sexually explicit stuff like Game of Thrones, you're directly contributing to child sex trafficking. You're creating a market. You're engaged in this sexualized culture. You're telling the people who make these decisions that there is a market for this sexualized stuff, and those are connected with the same people who traffic children because there's a market for it. Child sex traffickers go through Pornhub because they see how many views Pornhub gets. They see how many hits they get every day. I mean, it's like the largest website in the world right now. It's humongous. They see all that traffic and they say, hey, we want to traffic our kids through there and make a ton of money. And they do. That's not a conspiracy theory. That is verified fact. They've been caught in this before. And it's still going on. So if you're viewing things on Pornhub, you are directly contributing to that market. You are telling these traffickers there's a market for it here. And the minutes that you're watching, the videos that you're watching, all that view count, that's contributing to this problem. That's growing this market. Meaning that there is a child being raped somewhere because you watched a porn video. That's how the culture works. And I hate that that's the case, but nobody is going to be honest with you and just tell you bluntly how it is. I'll do it because I'm not in this for me, and I know a lot of what I say is unpopular anyway. But all I know is when I stand before God, I want to be able to tell him, you know what, I was honest with people and I didn't sugarcoat anything. I did tell people who followed me that if you view porn, if you view sexually explicit material, even movies and stuff that you can just watch on cable, you're directly contributing to the child trafficking marketplace. You're contributing to this over-sexualized culture, this culture that sells everything through sex. You're contributing to that. And I had to wake up to this fact too. You know, we all do. We all have to realize that. So to kind of wrap up here, I saw what I thought was a short. I don't know if this is a quote or what, but a friend I have on Facebook. I don't know this person personally, but you know, when I say friend, I mean like a friend on Facebook, a Facebook friend. I was scrolling through my news feed and I saw this pop up and it inspired some thoughts. I don't know if he wrote this or if he got it from somewhere else, but it says, there are many types of thieves, but the married man who watches porn is among the worst because he robs his wife. Absolutely correct. And that inspired some thoughts from me. And so I want to share this with you in closing because some people might feel convicted and might not know what they can do about it. So this is one way. And if you don't view pornography, then great. Make sure you don't start. Teach your kids not to. You got to have these uncomfortable conversations with your kids and your community. You can talk to your friends about the dangers of pornography, but also stay away from sexually explicit anything that uses sex to sell its product, whether it's a TV show, whether it's a brand of soda, you know, who knows? I think we should totally disassociate from all that stuff. Now I know us doing that is not going to be as strong as the sex industry is right now. But again, when we stand before God, what do we want to tell him? Do we want to tell him that, you know what, we did contribute to sex culture because we bought things that used sex to sell? Or do we want to tell him, I don't know if it made a big difference or not, but I decided I did not want to support anything that uses sex to sell, because I know ultimately it all leads to child sex trafficking, and I didn't want any part in that. Even if my decision to do that did not make a big dent in the problem, I didn't want to do that. We all have to stand before God someday, and I would rather tell him that. But the great thing is, if we all individually make this decision, we can shift the culture. I used the example before of how people are eating healthier now. That wasn't done from the top down. That wasn't done by the government making some new law. That was done by individuals taking responsibility for their own health. And now it's a big movement. We are in a really good place and time right now, because there is a lot of focus right now, more than any other time, on the child sex trafficking epidemic and on pedophilia and the normalization of pedophilia. There's a lot of focus on that right now. We need to capitalize on that. And the way we do that is by inspiring people to completely disassociate from anything that uses sex to sell things. Sex is supposed to be something between husband and wife. That's it. That's it. That's not meant to be shared anywhere else. That's a private thing that's meant only, and again, that quote, there are many types of thieves, but the married man who watches porn is among the worst because he robs from his wife. If you're sharing any of your sexual appetite or interest or anything sexual with anything else, even a TV show or a movie that's like provocative, you're robbing from your spouse. You're robbing from your husband or your wife. So I wrote this, and then we'll use this to close up tonight. 68% of Christian men struggle with an addiction to pornography. There's a large percentage of women addicted to it as well. Many reading this likely struggle with it too. So I'll say many listening to this right now, probably a lot of you, probably more than half, I would wager, struggle with it too. And okay, I'm not, and by the way, I want to make absolutely clear that I say this. I am not judging you. I'm not saying that you're irredeemable or what an evil person you are. I'm not saying any of that. All I want to do is alert you to the realities, because no one else will. Most churches won't. Definitely the culture won't. And there's no other way for you to know it. So that I'm just informing you that this is what you're supporting if you engage in this stuff. And it's not so to make myself look better or anything like that. I mean, what, you think I've never seen a rated R movie before? I'm in the same boat. You know, we all are. But that's why we need each other. We need each other to hold each other accountable, to sharpen one another, and that's one of the ways that I can help serve you. That I can serve you is by just being honest with you and telling you what this is, what it does, and what contributes to child sex trafficking. Because I know basically everybody listening, you want to be good Christians and you want to please Jesus and you want to be a good follower of Christ, as do I. And so the best way that we can do that is through knowing what's right, what's wrong, what's okay, what isn't, what contributes to what, you know. And so we how else are we going to know unless we know? So I'm not saying it as like a condemnation or to judge anybody or to be angry or make you feel bad about yourself or anything. I mean, if it causes you to change, maybe you should feel a little bit bad. There's nothing wrong with that if it causes you to change. But again, it's just these are things that we all need to repent of. And we need to get more comfortable with being open and honest with each other about this kind of stuff. So, and being willing to accept reproof when it comes, because, you know, when God teaches, he's a good father. He's going to teach us. He's going to, sometimes the teachings are, you know, they're tough. He is tough, but it's tough love, but it's still love, right? So we need to follow his instruction. Pornography. Many reading this, many listening to this probably struggle with it. The good news is you can learn to hate it and never crave it again. That is absolutely true. You can learn to hate pornography and never crave it again. And there's a lot of people that hate pornography and they crave it. They're not hypocrites. That's not what a hypocrite is. The world would label those people as hypocrites, but they're not. I remember when I was a drug addict, I hated the drugs. You know, I mean, my body, my flesh liked it. I liked the pleasure I was getting from it. But there came a point when I did it so much, I started to hate that I was doing it, but I would do it anyway. That's not a hypocrite. A hypocrite is somebody who makes different rules for themselves than other people. So if I was like, okay, you guys can't do drugs, but I'm going to do all the drugs I want, and then I made some kind of weird exception for myself, that's a hypocrite. But there are a lot of porn addicts that they don't enjoy it. Not really. I mean, they hate that they keep engaging in it. Actually, I think basically all Christians who engage in pornography feel exactly like that. They don't enjoy it. It's not like the world. You know, the world's addicted to pornography and they don't care. They love it. They would love to have more. You know, they think it's a virtue. They think it's something to be proud of. Christians aren't like that. So as a Christian, you're going to want to get a control of this. One good product I can suggest is called Covenant Eyes for the phone. Even if you're not addicted to pornography, but you just want to keep something on your phone to make sure your kids aren't getting into stuff, Covenant Eyes is... So I have it on my phone, and what you do is you set your husband or your wife as your accountability partner, you know. But what happens is if your kids ever get a hold of your phone, and tries to get into something, it'll send an alert to your wife's phone or your husband's. It'll to your accountability partner, because the app will look at it as if, you know, you're falling into pornography again, but it can be used as a great way to know if your kids are getting into something that they shouldn't be getting into when you don't have your phone because they have it. You know, if you're letting them borrow it, or if they say, you know, hey, can I make a phone call? You know, whatever. Can I look up something for a report that for school? You know, whatever it is. You can put this on your phones and your computers, and you and your wife, or you and your husband, if you're male or female, you put each other as your accountability partners, and then it'll send an alert. Because if you just have yourself, it'll send an alert to your phone if your kid gets on your phone and gets into something, and then he can just delete that alert. So you set an accountability partner. But so even if you don't have any kind of like a porn addiction thing going on in your family, it's great to just keep track of if your kids use your phone or something. So Christina and I use it for that. But if you do have porn addiction that you're trying to quit, this Covenant Eyes is a great app for that. Now, your accountability partner. If you're married, this should be your wife. If you have a porn addiction, then your wife should be your accountability partner. And then it's just, okay, so at that point, so the app takes 5 minutes to download and install, all right? So I said that this process takes an hour to start. We're only 5 minutes in. So then it's just the cravings and urges you have to take control over. Now, a good way to do this is to read every article. Take the rest of that hour, and really, you should spend hours and hours. Do it until you just can't do it anymore, until you're just so sick of porn that you just hate everything about it. But this is how to get rid of that craving. This is how to never crave it again. Read every article you can find about how pornography aids and motivates child sex trafficking. Find every single one you can find, and there's a lot. There's a ton of information on this, so it'll be easy, and you'll have a lot to read. So it'll definitely take up a lot of your time. You won't find an end to the amount of information that's out there about this. So every bit of pornography that is watched has a direct effect on the increase of child rape. You need to start looking at it like that. Don't close your, inner ears or inner eyes or whatever. Don't close your mind to that. Don't just conveniently ignore that. Confront it. Force yourself to read these articles. This is how you get rid of the cravings. Every bit of pornography that's watched has a direct effect on the increase of child rape. So every time you watch a video, basically you can think about it like this: another child is going to be raped now, because you have now expanded the market. You've grown the market a little bit more, and that's going to cause more child rape. You need to start seeing it like that. And it's an absolutely true way to see it. Even if you aren't personally viewing child porn, pornography in any form directly contributes to child sex trafficking and child pornography. Think of this in its truest and most personal form. Children are being raped so you can have your moment of pleasure, even if you don't see the rape personally. It doesn't matter. It's still happening. Children have been featured on Pornhub, the country's largest distributor of pornography. So if you're on Pornhub or any porn site, they all have this problem. If you're on any of them, you're supporting a company that has children being raped, and any sexual contact with a child is rape. There is no consensual child sex. There's no such thing. It all is rape. A child cannot consent. So they've been featured before on Pornhub and really all of these porn sites, and it still happens. They're still being featured. Pornography contributes to the over-sexualized culture we're living in, and if you're engaging in it, even if you're viewing it for free, your view counts, minutes watched, and everything else are used to show pornographers there is a larger market for it, so they will make even more. You're either contributing to the growth or reduction of the porn market. There is no in-between. There isn't. There isn't. You're either contributing to the growth or the reduction of the porn market. It's one or the other. There's no way around it. If you view pornography, you are supporting child sex trafficking, whether you want to or not. Can you sacrifice a few minutes of physical pleasure to spare the life of a child? Force yourself to start seeing it that way by researching as much as you can about child sex trafficking, and you can teach yourself to hate and be disgusted by pornography. This is what the Bible calls the spirit leading the flesh. The urges will go away, and you'll notice your general feelings and outlook improves. Basically, all recovered porn addicts say this. Everything gets better. They're happier. You'll literally be happier and more pleasant towards others. You'll have a better relationship with your husband or wife, even if you don't think you have a bad relationship right now. It'll be better. You'll be less depressed. You'll be less stressed out. You'll be less anxious. You'll even love people more. Also know that you're not alone. Jesus will help you if you allow him. You might be thinking like, well, I view porn here and there, but I'm not stressed out. You actually probably are, and you don't realize it, because that's something that porn does, is it actually does change your brain chemistry, and it masks that, and then you don't see it for what it is until you're out of it. It's one of those. So the only way you can know that is to stop viewing it and see how you feel after a while. So until now, you've had the luxury of ignorance, but you don't have that anymore. Reading this post or listening to this or watching this video has taken that away from you, and thank God. But this absolutely means that if you, from now on, if you continue engaging in porn, you are now knowingly supporting child sex trafficking, child rape. You're helping it flourish with full knowledge of what this means for innocent children. How will you respond when it's your turn to face God and he asks you, what have you done to the least of these, his little ones? You remember that in the Bible? God judges us. One of the criteria for how God judges us is how we treat the least of these, his little ones, because he says, what you've done to them, you've done to me. Is he going to say, enter thou into the joys of the Lord? Or is he going to say the other thing? So I wrote, will you be one to whom he says, I never knew you, depart from me into everlasting fire? Or will you make a stand against your own flesh today and allow the Holy Spirit to guide you? Will you be one of the ones where he says, enter thou into the joys of the Lord? So if you continue viewing it, you are actively supporting child rape. And you're even at this point a knowing accomplice to it, because you contributing to pornography is enlarging, it's widening the market. It's making the market bigger for this kind of stuff to come in. So and the same can be said about sexually explicit movies and shows that aren't even classified pornography, but there's still things that Christians shouldn't be watching. And like I said before, I know Christian entertainment a lot of times is pretty dull. It's not very entertaining. I get it. But can you sacrifice some entertainment for the life of a child? I think we can all do that. All right, everybody. We're going to call it good there. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope that this has helped. And I have certainly enjoyed talking to you today. I hope this has helped. Please go to dailyrenegade.com if you have a chance. Become a member today. Again, it's only $10 a month or $100 a year, and we could really use your business. It would be great to partner with you. So come on aboard, be a part of the family, and get a load of good content. Hey, if you're looking for something entertaining, there you go. Entertaining and informative. You don't have to view secular stuff anymore. You don't have to view sexually explicit stuff anymore. Come over to Daily Renegade. We have hours upon hours upon hours of stuff for you. And not only is it informative, but it's pretty entertaining too. So, all right, we'll see you there. Thank you so much, everybody. This has been great. I hope that this has helped. And until next time, love you all. Take care and God bless.